Welcome to LSAT Unplugged.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So I was really interested to chat with you. I came across you on YouTube, and then as we had a conversation, we discovered that you had actually used my website, the LSAT blog, back when you were studying and going to law school.
Yes, I did. In that moment, I was so nervous to start embarking on the whole journey that I was like Googling like a madman, trying to find any sort of resources that would help me like know what to expect when I got to law school.
That's cool. I'm glad that we actually connected now in person, live at least. And so I'm curious to hear a bit about your law school admissions journey. What was your LSAT journey like? What was your application process like?
So when I first started looking into law schools and trying to figure out where I wanted to go, my husband and I actually were living in Portland, Oregon at the time. So I was looking into the University of Oregon. I was looking into Michigan, New Orleans, all those schools. So essentially, what I first looked at was how and where I wanted to spend a good 2 to 3 years of my life. So I definitely think that the environment, especially now being in the law school environment, I think that deciding where you want to be for that good chunk of time definitely does play into it. Also, I was looking at the programs that each school had to offer. The school that I'm with right now offers the Innocence Project Clinic. So that is something that I have been interested in ever since I started undergrad even. So the fact that I actually saw that on the school website and I was able to become involved in it is insane to me. So when I started the whole law school journey, obviously the first thing to do was to register for my LSAT, which when I was an undergrad, I had a friend that had taken a LSAT prep course, and I did not take an LSAT prep course. I, at this moment, wish that I had, to be honest with you, but I wasn't really sure how to go about it. I used the Kaplan materials, and after our discussions, I found that a lot of their questions aren't reflective of the LSAT, which is something that I wish I would have known, because when I had gone into the LSAT, I had found that the questions were actually a lot more difficult than the ones that I had been practicing. It was literally like, studying this, getting there, and it was something totally different. So I would recommend to anyone now looking back, I mean, I love my journey and where I am right now, but I would definitely recommend taking an LSAT prep course if you can definitely manage it. So whenever I got my LSAT scores back, I had applied to schools, and there was an average. I had a really good GPA coming out of my master's program and my undergrad program, so I was hoping that would kind of cushion the blow a little bit, because my LSAT scores weren't exactly where I wanted them to be. I had taken the test 3 times, and I had actually prepared a lot for them, but I believe that if I would have taken an LSAT prep course, I definitely would have been a lot more focused and known, what I needed to focus on. So I had found that when I had applied to schools, it was the same process as, applying to undergrad, except throwing in this LSAT score, as well as you want to make sure you have good recommendations from your professors. I was fortunate enough to have some recommendations from previous employers who were prosecutors, the public defenders. Definitely while you're in school, making sure that you have the connections and the experience, because a lot of law schools, that's really what they're looking for.
Working and having connections and having real world legal exposure, I would imagine, is so helpful. Now, you mentioned the Innocence Project. For those who aren't aware, can you share a little bit about what that is and what your experience there is like?
Oh my gosh, I love it. So the Innocence Project is a nonprofit organization. It actually spans across the entire United States, which I don't know if there are any Netflix buffs watching, but Making a Murderer. So Stephen Avery actually was exonerated through the Wisconsin Innocence Project. So essentially it began with a way to exonerate wrongly convicted persons, and it focuses on changing legislation as far as DNA goes. So a lot of our cases that we handle now work with DNA exonerations. So for the last 6 to 7 months, I've had the opportunity to actually have hands-on work with real cases, and it's been an awesome learning experience. So
that's super cool. How has your experience in the real world with the Innocence Project, how does that differ from maybe the TV or Netflix portrayal of, or just in general, the media portrayal of these sorts of things?
It's a lot more work than it looks like. I think whenever you watch Netflix and everything, it looks like all glitz and glamour, that you always get to spend all your time in court. When in actuality, pushing a case through the court system, it takes a lot longer than people realize, and it definitely is a lot of work behind the scenes. Because we get tons and tons. So think of how long a case can go between start to finish. You have all these appeals, you have all this paperwork, and essentially it gets dropped on your desk, and it's like, okay, it's up to you to go through this, and I need you to find something that we can work with and that we can actually bring to court.
It's so funny. So yeah, it's like the media, they're only showing the juicy, interesting parts, not all the behind the scenes grunt work that makes it. I'm thinking of like the movie The Social Network, where it's like Facebook is suddenly an overnight success without any programming involved. They don't show anyone sitting behind a computer typing, right?
Yes, they don't. And it's definitely like volunteers. And it does, I believe one of the reasons why it does take so long to get the cases through is because since they are nonprofit and they are funded through like grants, donations, things like that, is that there isn't enough funding to pay personnel unless they're volunteers and they're just giving their time, which is why I'm thankful that actually the school that I go to now, they recently helped exonerate someone. So that's actually when I was applying to law school, I was like, that's where I need to go.
Wow,
So,
that's really cool.
Yes.
So you're doing this real world work in law school, and of course you're also doing the typical law school studying and exams and casework and such. How does that differ from what you did in undergrad or in your master's program? And what would you recommend to students who are not yet in law school but looking to get more of a handle on the academic side of things?
Oh my gosh. Definitely it is a different beast is what we like to call it. So in undergrad, I feel like it was definitely a lot more relaxed. You like go to school or you go to class, you might have like a few papers to write here and there, or tests to study for. But getting to law school, definitely our school will tell us that they break us down to build us back up, and they are not lying. Because I find, especially in classes, the Socratic method, which for anyone watching who doesn't know what it is, it's where they will randomly call in a student. You have to stand up in front of a class of 45 to 50 plus students and answer, and they will literally just hammer you with questions. So my biggest advice is to say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I am getting ready to graduate in a few months and I still have moments where I get butterflies in my stomach. But definitely the workload is a ton more than I witnessed throughout my master's program, throughout my undergrad. It's the amount of reading that we have to do depending on how many classes you're taking. My school is one of those that actually allows weekend night, and so depending, you can actually go part-time. I'm not familiar with how a lot of other law schools, I believe they maybe only allow you to go full-time. I'm not really sure. So depending upon the course load, you're looking at least 50 to 100 pages of reading. And then you need to brief the cases, which briefing requires you obviously to read the entire thing. You need to find the issue, the rule, why is the court ruling a certain way. So aside from just, autopilot reading everything, you actually have to sit down and comprehend this information that you're reading. And you do this all before you get to class. So that was definitely a lot different than, you can't just sit back in class and witness the learning anymore. You're actually pulled into it, and it's not something that you can just sit there and just take in.
Well, the Socratic method, it almost sounds like it's hazing a bit, but it's also forcing you to really engage, right? You can't be asleep during that.
No, you can't. And it's to be honest, I had the worst anxiety during my first term of school because, I had, so when I had graduated undergrad, it was in 2009. So I started back up at law school in 2017. So I had that good chunk of time between actually physically being in school, because I did get my master's online. So when you're put into these stressful situations and, I think we hype ourselves up, we're in law school. And then, you get called on and you think that you're just going to get shredded. So I had the worst anxiety through the first probably year that I was at school. But eventually I told myself, even if you get called on, even if you answer wrong, you still have all your fingers, you have all your toes, and you're going to walk out of that classroom the same way you walked in.
So it sounds like you got comfortable being uncomfortable.
I did. Oh my gosh. There's some stories, especially students that are unprepared in class. Never go to a law school class being unprepared. It is one of the most brutal things that I've seen, and so uncomfortable for everyone that has to witness it as well.
So basically the only inoculation against having a massive failure is just be prepared, do the readings, do the assignments so that you will be ready if they call on you.
Yes, it is, because it's also like, I feel like it ties in so much else to a lot of other things besides like just being or appearing smart in class. Those professors, they talk. And so if you're known as that student in class that is not prepared or, doesn't do the work, they're going to talk about you, and then they're not going to want to recommend you for, maybe a position that came open. So that's something that you want to be mindful of from the first day you walk through those doors.
So you just have to basically be actively engaged and do the work, but yes. you can't kind of sit in the back of the room the way you might have an undergrad.
No, because they will find you. They can tell who's paying attention and who's not.
Of course. Now, is this the Socratic method? Is this something that could come up in any law school class, like Civ Pro, Con Law, tax law, crim? Like, could it come up in any of those?
Definitely. I think a lot of it depends on the professor as well, because I know that at my school, some professors aren't as, I guess you say, harsh as other ones are. Some professors prefer to brief their own cases. So I think it depends. And I have seen, unfortunately, that some students with those professors that maybe don't come off as harsh to students, like students will take advantage of that. And it's an unfortunate thing, but it depends a lot on the professor, but I would say that probably 99% of professors will use the Socratic method.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's something to definitely expect. So
you have to be ready for everything all the time.
Yes, it is. And that's why it's like, it definitely, you do feel heightened all the time, because it's never something that you can just like walk into class. Like I still now, like I get butterflies going in, because you never know. Like it's fun, don't get me wrong, but it is something that you're constantly expecting and waiting for. So
I'd imagine it's fun to watch all the other people get called on, but then when it's your turn, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's like, I think also too, it's one thing that I had to kind of get through my mind is like, no one likes to feel embarrassed, right? We hate when we don't have the right answer. But think about it. I mean, we've never learned this law before. Everything is new to us. They're obviously years ahead of us in experience, our professors. So we have to be forgiving of ourselves. And also, like, we're looking at other students that might get called on in class. Like, they're going to look at us the same way. We're all in there together. So don't be afraid to not have the right answer.
Of course. It's kind of funny. I didn't go to law school, of course, as I said, but I actually took a law school style class in undergrad. And the professor, he was also the president of the university, so it was like a big thing. Like, and he called on me, and I totally fumbled, and it was so embarrassing. But at least I knew that like other people had also fumbled, and so although my cheeks did turn bright red and I started sweating and got uncomfortable, like everyone else has been through the same process, so it wasn't that big a deal. And it actually, what I found is that the exams matter much more in terms of your grade.
Definitely. I know that with my school that they don't grade on, I guess you say like preparation or how well you answered a question. So it's not like you get extra brownie points because you answered, that question right on Tuesday. What matters is the amount of work that you put in behind the scenes to prep and get ready for an exam. That's really what matters.
Right. And of course the content is new. Like you said, no one's done this stuff in undergrad, really. Like there aren't really undergrad law classes too commonly anyway. So it sounds like from what you're saying that the biggest prep you could do is like get used to reading a lot, get used to being prepared for class. And then maybe just to handle some of the nerves around Socratic method, would you think that maybe something like public speaking could be useful?
Definitely. I think getting involved with the moot court and mock trial, which mock trial is something that a lot of schools do, and that I know that a lot of employers love to see on a resume. So essentially it is what it sounds like, a mock trial where you have your Prosecution, defense, you get to question witnesses. And so that's mock trial. And then with moot court, it's essentially you learn both prosecution, defense sides, and then you have just a bunch of judges just hammering you with questions. And then, you go through rounds. So I would recommend that anyone who is petrified of that to definitely put yourself in as many uncomfortable situations as you can, because I promise you will grow from it, and it's going to definitely make a difference.
Wow, that does sound grueling, but at least if you do it in undergrad where the stakes aren't the same, then that could put you in a better position. Did you do those in undergrad, either of those?
I did not, no, none of them. I actually had the only practical experience I had coming into law school was I worked in a court, and I worked with various law firms, but as far as what I've learned at law school, it has been a totally different beast.
Wow, yeah. It sounds unique. And just could you lay it out a little bit more, the difference between mock trial and moot court?
So mock trial is you have you get a teammate, I guess. So it's like you have your prosecution that has 2 students on it, and then you have your defense, which has 2 students on it. And then I believe that the other side will take turns kind of being like the witness. So you get a fact pattern ahead of time, and you get whatever side you're on, prosecutor, defense, and then they play out this mock trial where you are asking questions to the witness, and more or less they rule on who made the better argument. So you have to get used to doing an opening, doing your closing statements, laying out the law, and essentially proving your case. So it's literally like a real life experience. And then with moot court, our school, I believe, came in second for the moot court competition in New York City. So I have to brag about that.
Oh, wow.
But essentially what it is you are put in front of a panel of judges, and they keep asking you questions about your case. And they're like, so what happened with this case? What happened in that case? Where's your law coming from? And they're just coming at people left and right. And so whoever, I guess, argued their side better gets to move on to the next round, so on and so forth. So mock trial is, playing in a courtroom, and then moot court, you're more on your own. You compete against other people.
Wow, that sounds really tough.
But kind of scary.
A good experience too, I suppose. I suppose that lawyers want to see that you've been through that process, because obviously that can relate to what you might do in your career down the line.
And that's definitely like a good recommendation. I found that as I've been moving through, because I think one difference between undergrad is I wasn't as involved probably as I should have been in programs, where once you get to law school, you want to be involved in those things. It's like no one wants to openly stand up and be like, hey, pick me. I want to feel awkward for, 30 minutes. But down the road, you're going to have that experience. And if a employer sees that on your resume, they're going to want the person that has more experience. So it's kind of choosing to take that little bit of uncomfortable like feeling you might have versus an employer that wants to choose you over the next person just because you have that experience.
Of course, it could pay off down the line.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, we talked a little bit about preparing to be called on by the professor for the Socratic method, but what about preparing for exams? What if you found that now you said that you're finishing up law school now, so you've been through 1L, 2L, finishing up 3L. It's been a long journey, I'm sure. What advice do you have for students who might be entering now in terms of what to do the summer before law school to prep, or what to do for 1L fall semester?
So I have to say that I did not do like a ton of preparation in the summer before, just because like I had that undergrad mentality, right? I'm like, okay, so you just show up on the first day of school and you just kind of work your way through. It's not that right here. So over the summer, I would definitely recommend going on your school's website, figuring out the scheduling. I know that a lot of law schools will put on the first week's assignment online. So you have to actually have an assignment prepared that first week. So you don't get to just show up and take it in. They will start, with the case briefing. They'll start calling on people like the first day that you have them. So definitely check the school website to make sure that you have a good handle on the assignments. Make sure you get your textbooks. You can't get through law school not having your textbook. You have to have those. It's like, I know that a lot of students in undergrad maybe didn't buy them. I know that a few of my friends didn't, but you have to have your textbooks. I would recommend, if you can, taking a campus tour. I didn't get to, unfortunately, but I mean, I wish I had, just to have like a better understanding of the layout and everything. And also I know that some schools offer the ability to meet the professors beforehand. The more professors get to know you on a personal level is better, because even in class, like if you speak with someone outside of class versus that like person that's in the front of the room, you know what I mean? Like you develop that personal relationship with them, and class isn't as intimidating, and you feel more comfortable engaging, right? With someone that you've had previous conversations for versus someone that just, you know what I mean, you see in class every day. So as far as exams go, I would recommend not waiting until the last minute. Like, do not do that, because we're looking at, our school does midterms and then finals, and they'll do like assessments throughout the term just to kind of see, make sure that you have a grasp on the law, which has helped out a ton. So what I like to do is I'll take my notes after class and I will review them. I find that one of the big things that a lot of students do, which actually impacts their finals, is that they will spend more time prepping for class and briefing their cases because they're petrified to get called on and not have the right answer than they do reviewing the information that they are actually going to be tested on. So reviewing your notes after class is a big one, because then you're going to keep building that information, and then as opposed to just like cramming it all in, you know, like a week or two before your exams. So preparing your outlines as soon as you can, I would recommend. And I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to prepare your outlines, but even in that sense, if there's a question, you can always go and ask your professor. And I also like that about school too, is that we have like a more personal relationship with our professors, and that it's not like undergrad where they're just that, you know, person that you go see whenever you need like whatever question answered, but it's like they like to engage with you and tell you, this is what I want. So starting your outlines as soon as you can is definitely going to help you. And studying throughout the term, as opposed to just waiting until, you know, the night before midterm, because you cannot cram as much information as we have into one night.
Right, of course. So it sounds like you want to build your understanding and solidify your foundation every step of the way, every single week. And then also it sounds like you're recommending not to get too focused on the Socratic method and getting called on. That could be a distraction from what really matters.
It is like, and I think that that's like one thing that I have learned about myself is that I obviously am always prepared for class, but I spend more time reviewing my material as opposed to, you know what I mean, making sure I know every in and out of every single case, because the way that I see it is that we're not them. So how can we possibly, you know, figure out what questions they're going to ask us? Because I know there's been cases where I know to a T and they ask me something about a test or whatever that I was like, what? So, I mean, as long as you show up and you're prepared and you gave it your best, and you got to kind of let it go.
That's all you can do. Just dust off and prep for next time.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome, Mia. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Why don't you share a bit about your YouTube channel and what you're doing with it, what you've done, what you will be doing, best way for folks to connect with you?
So what it is right now is when I started law school and, you know, getting ready to go, I wanted to see what other people were experiencing in their law school journey. So I would sign on, you know, Google law school blogs. And so I would kind of see what they would do on a day-to-day basis. So then that's where I got the idea. I was like, you know what, I'm going to start blogging my experiences, because I'm hoping that through my experiences that I could help, you know, other people as far as like what they can expect, you know, through law school and everything. I also do have a side business where I do makeup. So that's one of the things that I do that's focused solely through social media, as, you know, money on the side for law school, since obviously it'd be very difficult to work full time being in law school. So yeah, I love to blog and I love to share my experience, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to do the same thing as I'm prepping for the bar as well.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll have to do a follow-up as you prep for the bar.
Yes. I'll be coming to you for questions.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll do whatever I can, at least with the mindset stuff. Well, yeah, this has been a pleasure. Thanks so much. I'm sure that our audiences will find this super helpful. And I'll make sure to link to your YouTube channel below in the description for this episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.